Hey guys, it's Everyday Alchemy, and my buddies and I get hungry after a week-long adventure of blasting Zeds. So today we're going to be whipping up a beef stroganoff dish that takes very little time to prepare and is really hearty and awesome. It's easy to do in college because most of the ingredients can be stocked up on. To start off with, you're going to need 1.5 pounds of top round London broil steak. You're going to need a can of beef broth, some cream of mushroom condensed soup, salt, pepper, 1 onion, butter, sour cream, some mushrooms, noodles. I'm using light and fluffy egg noodles. And then if you like garlic powder, you can get garlic powder, but I hate it, so we're getting rid of that. And I'm going to start slicing down the steak into smaller, more manageable strips, and then I'll start prepping the rest of the ingredients. So this is showing a quick way to break down the onion into really small bits so it just melts into the stroganoff. Some recipes will tell you to cut it into rings or slivers, but I don't really like the consistency of onion that much, so I like to break it down and get the flavor without much of the texture. Over here you can see how I've broken down the meat into small strips, and that's ready to go. So as you can see, I've prepped the onions and the mushrooms. They've been diced and they're ready to go in the pan in just a second. This is the meat that I've taken and spread out in a pan so that I can season it. I'm going to dust it lightly with salt and pepper, and that's reasonably simple. I like to move it around while I'm dusting it to make sure that everything gets a reasonably even coat. And then I come in and I actually add a little bit of flour. Now I'm not dredging this flour, I'm dusting it in there. And I'm doing this very lightly and then mixing it in. It's just to add a little bit of breading for when I go over to my pan in a minute and brown the meat. I'm going to brown the meat so that it's already a little ways cooked, and then I can set it aside to rest afterwards. This sort of coating here, as you can see, is what you're looking for. If you wanted to add garlic powder, this is the stage of preparation where you would add it. But I can't add garlic powder because I can't afford to dull my awesome vampire powers halfway through the game. Alright, I've got my hot pan over here. It's got 2 tablespoons of olive oil and butter in it. I'm going to be using this to lightly brown the meat that I've just prepped. Once it's lightly browned, I'm actually going to remove the meat from the pan, but I'm going to leave the juices from the meat to help me season and cook my onions and my mushrooms. This just is an easy way to add more flavor to the dish. Alright guys, you can see here that the meat is now nicely browned, and I've got a gravy off to the side. I'm going to remove the meat and put it in this bowl to rest. The gravy is going to stay, and I'm going to cook the onions and the shrooms in it. Over here I've got my Coke because this has been about 4 minutes and stoves are hot, so I'm going to start doing that now. Alright guys, so you can see that I've removed the meat to sit. I'm going to start adding my onions and my mushrooms to this gravy. Then I'm going to saute those for about 2 minutes until the onions and the mushrooms are both tender, at which point I intend to dust them with flour and add the meat back into the concoction. I'm going to spread these out evenly and let them start to cook. Alright guys, so you can see that my mushrooms and my onions are browning in the gravy, and I decided at this point that it would be a nice idea to add 1 extra layer and component to the flavoring here. So I've got some red wine that I'm going to add, and then I'm going to let the alcohol cook off of that before I add in my beef, and then I'll let it sit for about 30 minutes. I may add some flour as a thickener to counteract the wine and the fluid, and it should be ready to go, so I'll start prepping the noodles. I like the color it adds too, that's nice. Alright, so I just added my teaspoon of flour and I'm adding the meat back into the stroganoff. After this I'm going to add both of my canned ingredients. The cream of mushroom soup goes in. Then I'm going to add in my beef broth, the whole can. I'm going to mix that up, and while I'm mixing it, I'm going to come in and I'm going to turn my heat down to a simmer. I'm going to cover it and let it sit for 30 minutes, and that's plenty of time for me to make my noodles. At this point, I cooked my noodles for 8 minutes to get them nice and tender, and after 30 minutes of simmering, the beef stroganoff is done. All I have to do now is add about 8 ounces of sour cream. This gives the dish a little more heft. It's what truly makes it stroganoff, and it acts as a thickening agent. While the gravy was delicious before, now it'll be a little bit heavier and a little bit thicker, which gives it that nice stroganoff consistency. After I mix this in, I'm going to plate it over my noodles, and you'll see the finished product.
Hey guys, it's Mini Drac, and today I'm going to be tasting for a change. Sometimes I play HVZ with him, so let's see how it tastes. I add a little parsley. It's hard to get the noodles.
How is it, bro?
Delicious.
Alright guys, thanks for watching. That's how you make your very own beef stroganoff. It's pretty delicious stuff.